Fortunately, a lot of the problems that the Russian military has are so deep-rooted and institutional that it will take something dramatic to cause them to change their outlook, at least in the near term. Everybody listening probably has seen the videos of Russian tanks stumbling into minefields, and how they react to that, of course, is the opposite of what you should be doing. So their ability to train and improve themselves while they are in the war seems to be pretty limited. And they have suffered a lot of casualties in their best units, and their VDV airborne units, these kind of units, they have been decimated. So a lot of those holes are being filled with conscripts. The logistics system from the Russian side was never designed to sustain long-term land operations outside of Russia, but yet that's what they're having to do, and it's very difficult. Their biggest shortfalls are something I alluded to earlier, is they don't have this joint mindset where you integrate air, land, and sea. They have not done that yet. They haven't done a single amphibious operation, their Navy, which really surprised me. They never got air superiority. They have not yet, I don't think in a year, they haven't destroyed a single train or convoy coming from Poland with equipment or ammunition. They don't have the ability to do these things. So now's the chance to help Ukraine crush them before they get a 2 or 3 year opportunity to reload and rebuild.
How the Russians have continued to feed people into this meat grinder that doesn't seem to have obvious strategic importance or even operational importance for them. Bakhmut is important not because it's Bakhmut, but because it has allowed the Ukrainian General Staff to buy time to prepare for their counteroffensive, which I think comes in a month or two. So the Russians have obliged them by continuing to push troops into it, and Ukrainians, I think, realized months ago that they could probably stop them without having to divert the armored forces that they need for their counteroffensive. So when you can step back from it, don't think about what's happening on each of these terrible streets, this destruction that we watch every day. Step back from it. It's actually a good thing for the Ukrainian General Staff that they have been able to stop Russian forces there. Well, again, if you keep your eye on what's at stake here, Ukraine is fighting for its life. And I think the Ukrainian General Staff knows that Crimea is the decisive terrain of this war, that Ukraine will never be safe or secure as long as Russia occupies Crimea. Ukraine will never be able to rebuild its economy as long as Russia occupies Crimea and can block access to Azov Sea, all the ports on the Black Sea. So Ukrainian General Staff has figured out they have got to get Crimea, and I think they intend to get it this year. In order to get it, you have to isolate it first and then bring up long-range precision capability that can hit Sevastopol, the airbase at Saki, the logistics hub at Zhenkoy, and other facilities on the Crimean Peninsula to make it untenable. You could kill every Russian soldier within 200 kilometers of Bakhmut. That would not change the strategic situation, but you liberate Crimea, that changes everything. And so I think the General Staff realized that they were able to, 9 months, the Russians have still not captured Bakhmut. 9 months. And I think the General Staff figured that out. And so okay, we're going to put what we have to here so that in the long run, we're able to achieve decisive effect, the end of this war. So that's a long answer to your question. Is it acceptable? Of course, every life matters. These are humans, but these are soldiers. This is the nature of war, and they are there doing a task that will lead to a decisive outcome for Ukraine.
So at the risk of sounding like a broken record, it starts with clarity at the top. What is our objective? And the president, the administration has got to specify with clarity, what is our objective? And saying that we're with them for as long as it takes, that's not clarity. That's not anything. That's it. So they've got to, and they can't say, well, we want Russia to lose or we don't want Ukraine to lose. That's not clarity. So specifying Ukraine will win, Ukraine can win, and it can happen this year. And winning equals total restoration of all Ukrainian territory, and then returning deportees, war crimes accountability, and then some kind of a guarantee for Ukraine after this. So if that's when they state that, then all kinds of things start happening. And Clausewitz would say, okay, well, that means Crimea, because Crimea is the decisive terrain. You could kill every Russian soldier in Donbass and it would not change the outcome. You liberate Crimea, that changes the outcome. So imagine that Ukraine agreed to some sort of a peace deal, and the price, which a lot of people are saying, come on, let the Russians have Crimea. Give that up. It's got red ribbons all around it and all kinds of other scary warnings. So let them have that, and then we can stop the killing. All right. Imagine that what happens in 2 or 3 years. Well, over the next 2 or 3 years, if Russia continues to sit in Crimea. They will never take down that big bridge. They will never allow any vessels to go up into the Azov Sea. So even if Mariupol and Verdansk, seaports number 2 and 3 for Ukraine, were liberated, no ships would be able to go in and out of Sea of Azov. Russia has zero credibility for living up to any agreement like that. And then Odessa, there's already 100 ships loaded with grain sitting in Odessa waiting to be inspected by some Russian inspector so that they can head through the straits. So Russia's control of Crimea gives them the ability to dominate all of Ukraine's Black Sea coast. So you've got a country whose economy is based on export of grain, of rare earth materials, iron ore. So those ports, Odessa, Kherson, Verdansk, and Mariupol, that's key to their economy. So their economy will never be rebuilt. And then after 3 years, Russia will have replenished all their losses. They'll wait for us to lose interest. And then here we go again, where they've got the Black Sea Fleet and on and on and on. So in other words, Ukraine will never be safe. It'll never be secure, and it'll never rebuild its economy as long as Russia occupies Crimea. That's why it's decisive. And I was at Munich Security Conference 2 weeks ago, spoke with a very, very, very senior executive of one of the 2 or 3 largest international investment firms on the planet. He said, if there's no ironclad guarantee for Ukrainian security, there will be no investment. There's no Marshall Plan. So they can't be secure as long as Russia occupies Crimea. That's why we have to help them get that. And it can be done, but not the way that the Pentagon describes it. What they talk about is basically like a squeegee, that just pushes everything back. Clausewitz would say, focus your main effort on the enemy's center of gravity. In liberation of Crimea is that center of gravity. You do that, all that stuff in Donbass, that happens later. There will be a lot less enthusiasm for so-called separatists fighting there once Crimea has been liberated, because that will unleash changes inside Moscow as well. I will tell you that, number one, the Ukrainian general staff is extremely professional. They're very disciplined. They have mastered OPSEC, operational security. We know more about what the Russians are doing than what the Ukrainians are doing, as it should be. They would not advertise, hey, by the way, we're just going to continue to do economy of force over here around Bakhmut, and we're saving all our stuff for a plan to isolate Crimea. So that they would never do that, nor should they. So based on all my different conversations and just looking at the map and understanding the operational level of war, what's required, the dumbest thing in the world to do would be attack into, Donbass. I mean, there's no value in that. There's no strategic value for Ukraine to do that now. And I think they all have calendars. They understand what the weather is going to look like in the next few months, but they also understand what America's political calendar looks like next year, what other nations in Europe, what their calendars look like. And so they understand that there's time and there's windows. And so, again, Clausewitz would I think, advise, now's your chance to get to liberate the decisive part of Ukraine and for this war. And that will unleash things that will happen on the other side that I think would lead to the liberation of the rest of Ukrainian territory.